Hi, everyone. Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to the author journey this week. We took a little bit of a break the last week or so, but we're back and ready and raring to go today. And I have a very special guest, the author of Birth Your Book, June Lucarotti, who is joining me today. And if this looks like a substantial book, it is. It is chock full of amazing guidance and advice and lots of worksheets, and we're going to delve into it in a moment. I want to give you just a little bit of background about June before I bring her up to join me. She's a published author, book coach, and editor who has been facilitating writing and meditation workshops for 17 years and Birth Your Book for 8 of those years. So it started as a program and it has an accompanying book. June has a BA in social welfare from UC Berkeley, an MFA in writing and poetics from Buddhist-inspired Naropa University, and a yoga teaching certification from Soul Tree. June has facilitated at CU's Wesley Foundation, Glide Foundation, UC Berkeley Community College of San Francisco, Front Range Community College, Oakland Unified High Schools, Naropa University, and so many more. And she can tell you more about that. And we'll give you more information about how to find June after we chat with her. But for now, I'm going to bring the author and the creator of the Birth Your Book program to join me. Hi, June.
Hi, thank you.
How are you? Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Very exciting. You know, if they actually determined the value of a book from the weight of it, this would be gold.
It's huge. It is definitely not a light workbook, that's for sure.
But you know what I love about it? I mean, it is big, but you know, with what you're trying to accomplish here, and we can dig into exactly what that is, you need some space. You know, you need to open up and have more space to explore. So, you know, I started reading this and was grabbed right from the get-go because as a fellow yogi, I really liked the approach that you take in this, your program in the book, in drawing parallels between the chakras and using the different chakras to inspire and motivate. And I'm going to ask you a little more about that. But in the first line that I underlined said, sometimes, as you'll find, surrender is a key element in the creative process.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know, like that just really captured me. Like, what do you mean by surrender?
Yeah. It's a great question. So a lot of what we talk about in the program and in the book is this idea of, it's really this balance of, you know, putting your whole heart and soul and discipline into writing your book and allowing room for the book itself. So we really talk about it being a co-creation with the book. And if we don't have that element of surrender, of sort of like, okay, I'm putting in my all and trying to control it too much. I mean, it is like, you know, birthing a child or having a child in that way. They're going to do what they want to do. And it's a creative process. And so sometimes we do need to just have that element of surrender and just allow the creativity to come. So one of the things that I realized, even in naming my business, was I started, you know, I tried to figure it out. What's the name going to be? And just was writing ideas out and racking my brain. And then I just gave up and I started tracing my hand. And I realized, I was like, oh, the volar is the palms of the hand and the soles of the feet.
Wow.
And it was just, I had to give up. I mean, that's just, like, I was like, I give up, like, truly just doodling.
I surrender, white flag.
Yeah, exactly. And that was what happened. So
the souls of that's really cool. And so volasessions.com is your website. So as we're chatting, if people want to go and have a look, and also just to remind folks, if you're watching live, and you have questions for June as we're chatting about this Birth Your Book program and workbook, to pop them into the comments. And even if you're watching, an already taped version, then you can still pop your questions in, and we come back on a regular basis. So here's my question. I think it's I have many questions, but here's the next one. It's a very to me unique way of approaching book coaching, right? So how did you come to a point where you decided that you would marry the mechanics of book writing with the sort of the more metaphysical chakras, the energy centers in the body, and maybe explain a little bit about chakras are
Sure.
first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'll say, and as you said in my bio, I have a background in a couple of different things. So my background was initially in mental health and social work. And I was working with folks who were really like just dealing with things, dealing with trauma, wanting to still write their books, even though they were, even though it might have been emotionally challenging to write. So that was one of the things, I kind of just collected these pieces of things that really supported me emotionally in writing this book and writing the other books that I'm working on. Because I found that the biggest thing that was challenging for people, myself included, a lot of times was the emotional space to write the book. So, so really bringing in the chakras it started off because I was healing myself. So just really kind of like healing my own body. And then realizing that could translate to the body of text. So, I started to, as I was doing a yoga practice years and years ago when I was in yoga teacher training, to feel like I was creating a home in my body. And I realized that that's what I wanted people to be able to do for themselves and for their audience, to create a home in their book. Mm-hmm. I wanted people to be able to open somebody's book and just find respite, just relax, just, find what they needed. So that's where it came from. And, the chakras are energy centers in the body. And there's so much wisdom behind it that's not mine. And I'll say I'm actually studying with Susanna Barkataki right now, who talks about, how to teach yoga without appropriating it, which is its own animal. And so what I ended up doing was teaching the chakras along with the different ways of looking at a text. So in the beginning, we focus on the foundation of the body, but we also focus on the foundation of the book. Mm-hmm. What does the structure look like? What are the sections? What are the, just the bare bones, the outline, that kind of thing. And then as we move up through the chakras, we create a dream house through the course that sometimes can translate to our book. And so, like, for example, once we get up to the core, the Manipura chakra, we talk about the infrastructure of the book, the walls, the things that hold the book together, and the courage that it takes to write a book. So that, like, courage, the willpower, once we get up to the heart, we talk about the audience and how our books actually connect with the world. So there's just a lot of, I think, correlation between writing a book and focusing on those spaces.
I couldn't agree more. And I love how you have broken out the elements of writing a book and the different, chakras as you're going through them from, bottom to top. I do an annual retreat every year, and I always start the day with a yoga practice for anybody who wants to join me. I also incorporate a little bit of meditation, but lots of breathing and cleansing practices and things like that. And even, as you become more familiar, and if you are a yoga practitioner, you start to even subconsciously incorporate those kinds of things into your daily life. So I
Mhm.
really think it's a really valuable approach and valid. One of the things, the other thing that jumped out at me at the very beginning of the book, and you wrote about when you talk about why are you writing, and when you make a decision to start writing, kind of how do you get out of your own way to make it flow, and you say your purpose has to be stronger than your limiting beliefs.
Mhm. Yep.
Talk a little bit about that. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I'd say if there's any focus in the program, even from the get-go, when I start to talk with people about joining the program or why they want to write their books, um, really honestly, some people don't have that strong of a purpose.
mm,
They think it'd be fun, and which is great. Sometimes you think it'd be fun and it totally works out.
mhm,
But it's such a it's a long invested process. Writing a book, editing a book, doing all the things that it takes to publish and market and all of that. So it's you really have to have a strong purpose. And a lot of the people that I work with, like I said, are a lot, not all, but a lot of them are working through some like childhood traumas and stuff while they're writing memoirs, things like that.
mhm, mhm,
And it can be scary to kind of like touch that stuff and not go down a rabbit hole and try, so that's where the yoga really comes in, the yoga philosophy and just the
mhm,
community support to anchor people in that. And then the other thing that really anchors people while writing their books is their purpose. So, a lot of times folks will think, okay, like this book is going to help other people. This is
mhm,
going to help other people who might be in a domestic violence situation. I had one person who was a child soldier in Nigeria, and that he was like, this is going to help people understand
mhm,
why war cannot be glorified. Like this is just, and that was like what kept people going. Like
mhm,
every time you're like, I don't have time, or I don't know if I'm doing this right, or whatever it is, it's okay, well, is the purpose strong enough? Like, is it strong
right.
enough to overcome those things, which are ultimately, those show up in every practice, every piece of our lives.
Mhm,
I just think it's such an amazing practice to focus on why are we doing
mhm,
this?
right. And I want to shout out to Karen Dean, who's watching us this afternoon. Hey, Karen. And her comment is that what you're doing is powerful and relatable. And Karen is an author here in Nova Scotia, and a dynamic speaker and business owner. And boy, she can relate to the motivation of writing a difficult book. Her book is We Are Unbreakable, and it's actually a collection of stories. So shout out to Karen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Um, I also wanted to talk a little bit about you. You have guideposts of life and tools of intuition. Talk a little bit about those. What does that mean? Your guideposts to life.
I'm trying to remember. What do I? um,
I guess the chakras are the guideposts,
yeah,
and how.
they are. I'll say also the other thing that I lean heavily on in the book and in the course are like three principles. One is peace, one is purpose, and one is play.
Okay.
And yes, I do like alliteration.
Makes things easy to remember.
Yeah, so the peace part of the workbook and of the program is the first part, and it's really like setting up your practice. We do an exercise in particular talking about what our values are and how the writing of the book really links to those values.
Mhm,
And it helps us see what we're already doing in our daily lives that we could kind of cut out or shift around or something to make room for the book. So much of the first part of the program in the book is like expanding time is how I translate that. It's creating the foundation in your life to write the book. The purpose section is really like, it's the second section because that's where people kind of get lost in the weeds. Like, what am I doing again? How is this going? And that's where people can really hone in and define their purpose. The program, we do some exercises around that to really define what that is. And then the play section is really fun. It took me a while to kind of figure out, what do I mean by play? And one of the pieces was like sharing your work. So I really encourage people to start sharing, even as they're in the beginning pieces of the process. Even if it's just a page or just telling someone that they're writing a book. And then also bringing in people who do book design and marketing, and like the play involves collaboration. It involves having people contribute to the book. It involves multimedia, and just there are all kinds of pieces to that.
Because writing can be so solitary. Well, it is very solitary. So, incorporating, understanding that, it really does take a team to bring everything to the end. But the initial writing part is kind of solitary. And we can get a little bit bogged down. And that's the other thing I really like about your workbook is, there's great insight into each section and guidelines and things, but then you follow it with exercises. If I probably opened it, so really good, solid cues and writing prompts. So like I said, this is not only, it's a hefty book, but it's full of really good direction and guidance. One of the things that occurs to me is when you were talking about the discussions, like how each different section of book development connects to a chakra. Do you have any writers, or do you have any part of your coaching that would say, if you're a romance writer, you want to hone into your, anahata or ajna chakra, or, is there any kind of a connection in that way?
That's a good question. Honestly, I hadn't thought of it that way. I mean, it's a great way to think about it. I would consider thinking about it that way, but no, we don't often translate them with
Into
each
that.
genre. Yeah, yep.
Because tapping into Manipura, if your character is like really powerful and but then the other chakras that would resonate with a more of a low key, I don't know.
I think that's really interesting. Yeah, it's definitely another twist on it, another way to go. I mean, I think there's so many different ways of thinking about the body, and I think the chakras in yoga is just one of the forms. But there's an exercise that we do when we get up to the sacral chakra below the navel, where we talk about characters and character development. And it's actually closest to systems theory, family systems and therapy. And I'm very clear, I'm not a therapist. I don't do therapy with my clients. But it can be kind of fun when you're talking about character development too. We do sort of a caricature of different parts of ourselves.
Oh,
and sort of
I love it.
We're like silly about it, and try not to take it too seriously, but we do things like, what's your favorite food and what's your favorite music? And I've got this character named Cherry Cheeks, who has like, this is like the people pleasing side of me. And she has her 80s boombox and her roller skates and her cotton candy. She's passing out her cotton candy on the boardwalk. I mean, she's just these exercises can be really fun. And I've done these with, I've turned the 6-month program into a workshop as well. So I did this with teens and tweens, which was really fun. They created their characters and
fun.
Yeah.
So obviously you work with all different age groups in all different genres, and so this process can really apply to any genre and any style of writing. And it was, one of my interviews, a few weeks back where the person who had created a collection of stories had gone through your Birth Your Book program, and she called you her midwife, which I thought was really cute. And I said, oh, we should get that midwife on to the author journey and talk about that.
Yeah.
So, what now, how did you, I'm thinking there's also lots of application, when people talk about, getting blocked, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. If people are writing, emotionally charged material, but, and how to sort of clear the decks. And you also say something about be with the mess, so just kind of sit in it. And can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the first things when people first start to talk with me about writing their books, oftentimes the first complaint or the first obstacle is time and the time to write my book. But what we often find is beneath that is vulnerability. And there's a vulnerability of what people are writing and whether they're willing to put it out there to the world and who exactly is going to read this and all of that. And then there's a vulnerability of just like putting the writing out there itself. So some, people have their feelings and thoughts about having gone through English in high school or college, or, whether they're a good writer or not a good writer, whatever it is. And so one of the metaphors in the book is this, like, I definitely don't claim to be a doctor either, but if you think about it like that, you generally don't go to the doctor when you're feeling fantastic. You show your blood and guts and your all that stuff. And that's what an editor does. That's what a coach does.
Right.
Help be with you in that and, sort of shape things the way that they need to be. But there is often, I know there was in my book, that feeling of just all the pieces feel like they're floating around and feels disorganized, and, you kind of don't know where you are. And yeah, I think you almost have to be in that for a little bit.
You got to sit in it and, just get it out. But that's what I always say. You're the one with the idea and the story. Just get it down. And then, the editors, pretty it up for you. But, just get it down. And you talk about clearing the emotional desktop. And I really like that as well. Right. But it's hard to clear it until you sit in it and live it. Right. And figure out how you want to present this, and how vulnerable you want to be. And I have Anne Bywater's just joined us. Yay, Anne's a Paradise writer. Anybody who's come to my annual retreats, they become a Paradise writer. So Anne, thanks for joining us. And you also let's talk a little bit about like the mechanics of it, and you talk a little bit about accountability buddies. And how does that work?
Yeah. So I'd say if there is another sort of anchor in the program beyond the self-care and beyond the purpose, is that community aspect. So I think I've had a lot of people tell me that the most powerful part of the program is the community. We do retreats, we do community writing rooms. The retreats are available to the public. You can come for a couple of times for free and just be with the community. People can connect about their books. You can share pieces of your book. A lot of folks in my program host writing rooms. I host one every week, but they also host them. We have one person becoming a mentor, sort of starting that process. And I think it's just, like Heather was on your show talking about her book, and she, ended up collaborating with a lot of the writers from the program to put pieces into the book. And so
that's awesome. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I think that's a really valuable piece. I've had a couple of groups who continue long after the program, and people can continue coming to the retreats for free after the program as well. But I have people we had a mama's writing group, like who kind of branched out and woke up at 5 a.m. every morning, and they continued it like
Wow.
a year or two after the program, and they just kept going. And so it's that kind of stuff that I think is really valuable. I think, yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, we need connection, even while writing can be a solitary practice. It doesn't have to be.
That's incredible to hear. So how, if somebody is interested in joining, I was just brought up your website. Is this the best place to go to find out about what's coming up? And
yeah, it has my contact info on the website. I don't always have the next program posted on there with all the information. So the best thing to do is probably to book a call with me. So I'll say it's calendly.com/Vola sessions is the best thing to do. But email, call, I'm available. So
okay, excellent. And I also just want to give another shout out about your the book, and of course it's on Amazon. There's some 5-star reviews. Is this the best place for someone to get a copy of Birth Your Book?
Yep.
Okay, and it's on, this one is .com, but I'm assuming, I think I would have gotten it on .ca, Amazon Canada. So, and what's the for you? What is the best comment or feedback that you've gotten from a participant or a client that keeps you going?
That is a good question. I've had some pretty amazing feedback. I'd say one of them recently was really great. I was interviewing on my podcast. It's Birth Your Book on Spotify. And one of my writers was on the program, and she said she kept the label that I sent her. So I send everybody the workbook for the course. And in the address on the label, I often write their name and then comma author, because I just want them to step into that space once, just from the get-go, as soon as we start. And so right, at the end of the program, she was an author. She published, even within the program, she launched the book. She said on the podcast that she kept that label that said her name and author, and it just meant so much to her. And I thought, oh my God, I'm so glad.
It's those tiny little things, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I say at the very beginning of all my workshops. Look at the person next to you on your right and say, I'm an author. And look at the person next to you and say, I'm an author. And then, and believe it, live it, say it, and, you just put it out there. So, do you have any final words of advice for someone who's sitting in front of their computer, watching that blinking cursor and just ready to write their book?
Yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of tips and tricks, like using timers and, writing things down, like in a notebook, I think is really helpful if your brain gets crowded. I think ultimately community, like, don't do it alone. I think that's the biggest thing I would say, is you don't have to do it alone. If you're staring at the cursor, pick up the phone, reach out to somebody that who you can talk things through with, or reach out to Anne or myself or any other writer, any other person, because it's, like I said, as much as we think I can do it on my own, it's so much, even these days, especially these days, we need that support.
We need the warm embrace of fellow writers, and that's exactly why I do the author journey. And I was very, very happy that you were able to join me, and I thank you for sharing your story and for all you do for authors. I appreciate you. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you too. Yeah.
And just keep us posted and let us know what's going on. And everybody can, one last time, if you want to reach out to June, Lucarotti and learn about Birth Your Book at volasessions.com.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thanks so much.
And thank you everyone for joining us today on the author journey and learning more about the Birth Your Book program. June Lucaratti, have a look, find out more, and visit June's website and say hi. And for now, I'm Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing, and I'll see you next time on the author journey. Bye for now.